The day my husband vanished began like any other. Alex kissed me goodbye, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder as he headed out for a business trip to Singapore. "I'll call when I land," he promised, flashing that easy smile. "Love you, Sophie." Those were the last words I ever heard from him, or so I thought. I'm Sophie Chen, and at 32, I became a widow. At least, that's what I, and everyone else, believed. The call came at 3 a.m. Mark, Alex's best friend and business partner, was barely coherent through his sobs. Their private plane had gone down somewhere over the Pacific. No survivors. I collapsed against the wall, the world spinning around me. Alex and I had been married for 7 years. We were trying for a baby. We had plans, dreams, a future that evaporated in a single, cruel moment. But the real shock didn't come until the next day. At the bank, I was met with a carefully blank expression from the manager. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen," he said, "all of your joint accounts were emptied yesterday morning. The transfers were authorized using the correct credentials." I blinked. "That's impossible. My husband, he died yesterday." The manager hesitated. "According to our records, Mr. Chen personally approved the transactions at 9:43 a.m., before his scheduled flight." The numbers on the screen blurred before my eyes. $3 million, gone. It didn't stop there. The private plane company had no record of Alex or Mark booking a flight. Our house deed had been transferred to a shell corporation 2 months ago. The safety deposit box? Empty. There has to be some mistake. I told the detective assigned to the case. Alex wouldn't do this. He couldn't. But he had. The so-called plane crash was fiction. Mark's tearful phone call had been placed from the Cayman Islands, where millions in cryptocurrency had just been funneled through untraceable accounts. And Alex? Security footage showed him visiting a storage unit weeks before his disappearance. Credit card statements revealed purchases, camping gear, burner phones, supplies. He had been planning this for months, all while kissing me goodnight. Our friends were stunned. "He adored you," they said. "You two were perfect together." Were we? Looking back, I saw the signs, the late-night phone calls, the ever-growing business trips, the way he insisted on handling our finances alone. I had trusted him completely, and he had played me. The house went into foreclosure. I moved into a tiny apartment, taking only what I could prove I had paid for myself. The life insurance company denied my claim. Mark disappeared. I unraveled. My sister, Grace, moved in, forcing me to eat, to get out of bed, to exist when all I wanted was to disappear, too. "He's not worth this," she told me, night after night. "You're stronger than what he did to you." I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. At school, my students noticed. Their innocent questions, "Why are you sad, Miss Chen?" brought me to tears. Months passed in a haze of grief and anger. The police investigation stalled. Without a body, without concrete proof of fraud, Alex had gotten away with everything. He had erased himself. Grace convinced me to see a therapist, Dr. Martinez, an expert in betrayal and trauma. In her quiet office, I began untangling the truth of my marriage. He had love-bombed me at the start. She explained the whirlwind romance, the extravagant gifts, the constant affection. It was all part of the plan, designed to build trust quickly. "People like Alex are master manipulators," Dr. Martinez told me. "They don't just lie, they construct realities. They learn what makes their targets feel special, then mirror it back to them." I thought back to the beginning, how effortlessly he had swept me off my feet. The grand gestures, the passionate declarations, the way he insisted on intertwining our lives so completely. "But 7 years," I whispered. "Who keeps up an act for 7 years? Sociopaths can," she said gently. "To them, relationships are transactions. They mimic emotions perfectly, but there's nothing real underneath." The truth burned through me, dissolving the last fragile illusions I had clung to. Alex hadn't loved me. I had been an investment, a carefully crafted backstory, a means to an end. Our marriage was never about partnership. It was a long con. A year after his so-called death, I filed for divorce on the grounds of abandonment. It was a strange, hollow kind of closure, severing legal ties to a man who, in every meaningful way, had already erased himself from my life. I changed my name back to Sophie Lin, refusing to carry even a trace of him with me. Grace helped me move into a new apartment, one I chose for myself. I rebuilt, slowly. I took financial literacy classes, opened new accounts in my name only, and forced myself to trust my instincts again. But sometimes, In the quiet hours of the night, I dreamed of Alex. In my dreams, he was always smiling, that same effortless, disarming smile that had once made me feel like the most cherished person in the world. I would wake up hating myself for missing the man I had thought he was. I had no way of knowing then that 8 years would pass before I saw that smile again. Or that when I did, it would be in an airport terminal, thousands of miles from home. That the man wearing it would be standing with his new family, living the life he had stolen from me. And that this time, I would be ready. 8 years is a long time, long enough to dull even the deepest wounds. I had built something new, something real, a career as a school principal, a support system I trusted, even a cautious return to dating. I had made peace with the fact that Alex was gone, that justice was unlikely. Then, on an otherwise ordinary afternoon, fate intervened. I was at LAX, waiting for my flight to Boston. A child's laughter rang out nearby, pure, carefree joy. I glanced up from my phone. And there he was. Alex stood 30 feet away, holding hands with a young boy. Beside him, a woman in designer athleisure leaned against him, heavily pregnant, while a little girl clung to his other hand. They looked picture perfect, like a family from a holiday card. He hadn't changed much, a few gray strands at his temples, deeper laugh lines, but still polished, still effortlessly charming, the kind of man people trusted on sight. Then he turned. Our eyes met. I saw the exact moment recognition struck him. His face paled, his grip on his son tightening instinctively. He pulled his family closer, as if shielding them. The woman, his wife, noticed his sudden tension and followed his gaze, confusion flickering across her face. My hands didn't shake as I pulled out my phone. Years of therapy had prepared me for this moment, even if I had never truly believed it would come. I snapped several clear photos before he could react, then dialed a number I had memorized long ago. Detective Rivera, remember that case from 8 years ago? I found him. Alex's shock turned to fear. He whispered something to his wife, who hurriedly gathered the children and started toward their gate, but he stayed behind, watching me, as if debating his next move. Then, cautiously, he approached, like a man approaching something dangerous. Sophie, he murmured, his voice a ghost from another life. Please, I have a family now. You had a family before, I said evenly, or was I just a convenient mark? His eyes flickered toward the security cameras, the bustling crowds. He was calculating, as always. It wasn't like that, he insisted. I was in trouble. I owed people money, dangerous people. Disappearing was the only way out. And draining our accounts? Faking your death? Letting me grieve for years? Was that the only way too? I can explain everything, he said, taking a slow step forward. Maybe we could get coffee, talk somewhere private. No, my voice was firm. We're not going anywhere private. In fact, you might want to call your lawyer. The FBI takes a special interest in financial fraud cases involving fake deaths. His expression hardened. You don't want to do this, Sophie, he said quietly. Think about my kids. I didn't even hesitate. Think about the life you stole from me. I am thinking about them, I said, my voice steady. I'm thinking about how they deserve to know who their father really is, just like your wife deserves to know the man she married is nothing more than a con artist. Security officers were closing in. I had mentioned a fraud suspect when I called Rivera. Alex noticed too. He straightened his expensive jacket, his posture trying to regain that air of authority. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice low, pleading. I'm not the same person I was back then. I smiled, a calmness settling over me, a peace I hadn't known in years. That's where you're wrong, Alex. You're exactly the same person. You're still lying, still manipulating, still trying to protect yourself, no matter who you hurt in the process. The only difference now is that I can see right through you. The officers reached us. Sir, we need you to come with us, one said. For the briefest moment, his mask slipped, and I saw it, the same cold, calculating look that had once been hidden behind charm and affection, the look I had been blind to for so long, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by a businessman's practiced confusion. There's been some mistake, Alex said smoothly, his voice as polished as ever. I have a flight to catch. No mistake, Mr. Chen, the officer said, his tone unwavering. Or should we address you by another name these days? His new wife was watching from their gate, concern evident as she clutched their children close. My heart ached for her, for them. They were innocent in all of this, soon to have their world ripped apart just like mine had been. As the officers escorted Alex away, I saw him fumble for his phone. He was probably calling the high-priced lawyers his stolen money had secured for him, but it didn't matter. I had what I needed, proof that he was alive, photos that would ensure he couldn't slip away again. Detective Rivera arrived within the hour, accompanied by 2 FBI agents. They took my statement in a quiet office, documenting every detail about Alex's new life that I'd uncovered. "He's using the name Alexander Whitman now," one agent said. "Looks like he's been running a successful investment firm in Vancouver. Married, 2 kids, third on the way. On paper, he's the model citizen." "He was always good at appearances," I muttered, watching them coordinate with Canadian authorities. I felt a strange mix of emotions: satisfaction, yes, but also sorrow for his children, and something else: relief. Relief that I could stop wondering, stop looking over my shoulder, stop questioning myself for not seeing through him sooner. My phone buzzed with a text from Grace. "Did they get him?" "Yes," I replied, "it's finally over." But I had no idea then how wrong I was. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. The arrest of Alexander Whitman, formerly Alex Chen, made international headlines. Dead husband found living double life. Multi-million-dollar fraud scheme exposed. The story was too sensational to ignore. His new wife, Rebecca, reached out through her lawyer. She wanted to meet, to understand. We arranged to talk at a neutral location, a hotel conference room with our attorneys present. Rebecca was beautiful, younger than me, and very pregnant. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but she carried herself with dignity. "Did you know?" she asked, her voice raw with pain. "Was any part of your marriage real?" I shook my head slowly. "I'm still asking myself the same questions. I thought we were happy. I never saw it coming." She crumbled then, her composure shattered as she sobbed. 7 years, she cried, her voice breaking. "We've been married 7 years. Our children, what do I tell our children?" The weight of her words hit me. 7 years of trust, of love, of building a family, only for it to be destroyed by his lies. I wondered, then, if he had planned to disappear on her too, eventually. The legal proceedings stretched across months, complicated by multiple jurisdictions. The FBI uncovered a web of fraud that spanned decades. Alex hadn't just stolen from me. There were other victims, other schemes, other lives he had ruined. His firm in Vancouver was built on stolen money, its foundation made of lies. Clients' investments had been mishandled, funds diverted into offshore accounts. The total amount stolen was staggering, over $50 million. Mark, his former partner, who had helped stage the fake death, was located in Thailand and extradited. Under intense questioning, he cracked and revealed everything. The plan had been in motion for years before Alex's so-called death. They had set up shell companies, false identities, a network of deceit so elaborate it was a miracle it had taken this long to unravel. I testified at the trial, staring at Alex across the courtroom. He seemed smaller somehow, his expensive suits replaced by prison orange. The confident, charming man I had once loved was gone, replaced by a desperate criminal, his carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of the evidence. "Please," he begged when he was given the chance to speak, "I did it for my family. I needed to protect them." "Which family?" The prosecutor shot back coldly. "The one you abandoned? Or the one you lied to?" The verdict was swift and unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The judge showed no mercy, citing the calculated nature of his crimes and the devastating impact on his victims. 25 years, she declared, no possibility of parole for 15. Rebecca divorced him immediately. In an unexpected turn, we formed an unlikely friendship, leaning on each other through the media frenzy and the grueling aftermath of the trial. Her children would need therapy, just as I had, but they were young. They would recover, rebuild their lives. They would eventually understand that their father's actions were not their fault. The recovered funds were divided among his victims. I received most of what he had stolen from me, plus interest and damages. But the real victory wasn't financial, it was freedom. I visited him once in prison, 6 months into his sentence. Not for closure, I had already found that. But there was something I needed to say. "I forgive you," I said, my voice steady as I spoke through the glass partition. "Not for you, but for me. I'm done letting what you did define my life." He stared at me, his usual manipulative charm finally stripped away, leaving only a hollow man in his place. "How?" he whispered, his voice faltering. How can you forgive me? Because I'm stronger than what you did to me. I always was, I replied. You just helped me realize it. I stood up to leave, but something stopped me. I turned back. One more thing, I said. Rebecca and I are starting a support group for victims of financial fraud. Your story is helping others protect themselves. So, in a way, you finally did something good. I walked out of the prison, feeling a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying lift from my shoulders. As I stepped into the cool air, my phone buzzed. It was a text from James, my boyfriend. A kind, honest man I had met through my school's parent association. Proud of you. Dinner tonight? I smiled, thinking about how far I had come, how long it had taken me to trust again. To believe that love didn't have to be a weapon, didn't have to be built on lies. James had been patient with me, understanding that my walls were built from hard experience. That evening, over dinner, he proposed. The ring was simple, a far cry from the flashy diamond Alex had once given me. But James offered me something infinitely more valuable: truth, partnership, and love built on respect rather than deception. Yes, I said, tears of joy replacing all the years of pain I'd carried with me. Later that night, I stood on my balcony, gazing at the city lights that flickered like small promises in the distance. I thought about the young woman I had once been, devastated by betrayal, believing her world was over. I wished I could tell her that the end of one story was just the beginning of a much better one. My phone buzzed again, a text from Rebecca. Support group meeting tomorrow. 5 new members. We're making a difference. I smiled, feeling the quiet pride of knowing that our work was making an impact. Sometimes, life's darkest moments can lead to the most unexpected light. Alex had tried to destroy me. But instead, he forced me to discover my own strength. His betrayal had led me to help others, to find real love, and to become someone I was proud to be. The next morning, I walked into my school office, where pictures of my students lined the walls, faces full of trust and innocence, reminding me daily why honesty matters and why integrity must be protected. A news alert flashed on my phone. Another financial fraud case exposed. Another family devastated by lies. I added the victims' contact information to our support group list. Their healing journey was just beginning, but they wouldn't walk it alone. Because that's what survival teaches you: your worst moments can become someone else's hope. Trust, once broken, can be rebuilt stronger. And love, real love, is always worth the risk. Alex would serve his time. His children would grow up. And life would continue on. But his greatest legacy wasn't the pain he caused. It was the strength he inadvertently gave to those he tried to break. Sometimes, I still dream of that day in the airport, of seeing him with his new family. But now, those dreams don't hurt. They remind me of how far I've come. Of what I've built from the ashes of his deception. James and I married in a small ceremony, surrounded by friends who had truly earned the right to be there, people who had loved me for who I was, not for the illusion I once allowed myself to be. Rebecca stood beside me as my maid of honor, a twist of fate neither of us had seen coming. Her children call me Aunt Sophie. They are growing up knowing that truth matters more than appearances, that love can be real and safe, and that people can change, even after they've been broken. Life has a way of coming full circle. 8 years after my world had shattered, I stood before our support group, sharing my story one last time before passing on the leadership to Rebecca. Rock bottom, I told them, my voice steady and filled with conviction, is where you discover what you're made of. And sometimes, the people who try to destroy you end up giving you your greatest strength.